first IDAHO Forum was hosted by the Dutch government in The Hague, the Netherlands, in 2013, following that successful event that saw 11 countries calling for an EU comprehensive approach on LGBT equality. It was decided to make this event an annual occurrence. In 2014, the forum was held in Valletta and was co-hosted by the Swedish and Maltese governments at the Mediterranean Conference Centre. This event brought together ministers, high-level officials and representatives of civil society to discuss and plan the next steps towards lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans and intersex equality at the national, European and international level. The second IDAHO Forum focused on the participating countries' declaration of intent on working towards ensuring safety, fulfilling the rights to education, ensuring equality for LGBTI families and equality for trans and intersex persons.
Well, this conference is an opportunity for politicians and civil society to be together and to discuss matters, also based on the survey held by FRA last year, and we had the presentation of some other results yesterday, and which confirm how much more still needs to be done in this area of LGBTI rights. And so this is the right place where we can voice what still needs to be done, because it's the forum where civil society representing NGOs from LGBTI organizations, and you have the political class here, which is the class which will have to legislate.
It has been a very good thing to cooperate with Malta and Sweden and arranging it together. And we also have a strong call from the IDAHO Forum for LGBT rights all over Europe, from several states in Europe and also from the civil society.
A press conference welcomed the participants to the IDAHO conference, indicating the current state of affairs as detailed by the findings of the EU Fundamental Rights Agency survey, and ILGA, Europe's annual Rainbow Package, and the political commitment of Sweden's Minister Erik Ullenhag and Malta's Minister Helena Dalli.
For us, co-hosting this forum with Sweden makes it even more meaningful, since the Swedish government has been on the forefront for a very long time, with both of us working together towards this forum, as well as having several ministers and governments represented during these 2 days. The European continent is brought together in the fight for equality.
And to win that battle, you need brave political leaders. And I'm proud to be friend of Minister Dalli, who have shown to be a really brave political leader in this context. Go back 10 years ago, and you would see that Sweden and Malta had quite different opinions concerning LGBT rights. But thanks to your brave work, we are now in a situation when Sweden and Malta together can take the fight for LGBT rights, and I'm very happy about that development.
A symbolic handing of the IDAHO Forum flag by Dutch Minister Boesmaker to Maltese Minister Helena Dalli and Swedish Minister Erik Ullenhag marked the official opening of the 2014 IDAHO Forum. The first day of the conference proceeded with the presentation of the Fundamental Rights Agency LGBT survey, followed by an interesting debate among participants. One of the main highlights of the survey concerns the personal discrimination and harassment amongst LGBT persons, with almost half of all respondents clearly stating that they had felt personally discriminated against or harassed on grounds of sexual orientation in the preceding year. Results showed how 57% of the respondents in the youngest age group, between 18 to 24 years, were most at risk, followed by lesbian women at 55%, and those with the lowest incomes are at the bottom. The survey also revealed the extent of difficulties that trans and gender variant people face at their place of work and in their daily life. The FRA survey also showed that only 51% of trans respondents were in paid employment, full and part-time, in comparison with 68.4% in the general population. Additionally, in the year prior to the survey, around 1 in 3 trans respondents felt discriminated against because of being trans when looking for a job or at work. Speaking during an official welcome reception held that same evening, Malta's Prime Minister Dr. Joseph Muscat emphasised how Malta is working hard to embrace diversity, promote equality and fight against discrimination at every turn.
We have a choice. We can question, judge, condemn, or even hate. Or we can accept, embrace, celebrate and love. I know what side of the argument I am on and you are on. We are proud that we may well be the first country in the world to have an expressed reference to gender identity in our constitution. That vote was unanimous. This event is ultimately about Europe, the Europe we all aspire to live in. Having so many countries represented, especially and also at ministerial level, augurs well for what we are trying to achieve. We need to stamp out homophobia and transphobia once and for all.
The Idaho Forum proceeded on Wednesday with keynote speeches by the Minister for Social Dialogue, Consumer Affairs and Civil Liberties, the Honourable Helena Dalli, followed by Swedish Minister for Integration, Mr. Erik Ullenhag.
We need to work tirelessly to ensure that LGBTI persons are given what is due to them, because justice today is justice denied.
We are here together to listen, to learn, to grow together and to further work in this field of human rights, because in the end, when we are talking about LGBTI rights, we are talking about human rights. We've heard of experiences, the different experiences of people living in the different countries, even though they are all European countries. We can see the different levels of progression which has been made in this particular area of policy. So it's a wonderful experience where we can exchange our views, our ideas and see what are the best practices and how to proceed in granting rights for LGBTI people.
If everyone who stands up for human rights stand together, we are unstoppable. Let the signal from this year's IDAHO be clear. Together with Conchita and so many others, we unite. We unite for a Europe where everyone is respected for whom they are. We want to make a change for LGBT people. We need to work together to stop homophobia and transphobia.
The most important thing I tried to say was that human rights are LGBT rights and LGBT rights are human rights. All countries, all states, all governments have an obligation under international law to create societies where people can decide by themselves whom to love and also be respected for their identity.
The Idaho Forum was attended by various dignitaries, including the Council of Europe Commissioner for Human Rights Niels Mushnik and Mr. Michael Cashman, the co-chair of the European Parliament's Intergroup on LGBT rights.
I think first of all the way forward is to enforce minimal human rights standards which all European countries have signed up to. The European Convention on Human Rights, the Committee of Ministers' recommendation on LGBT rights from 2010, every country has signed up, has obligations and must fulfill them. That's number one. Number two is I think we need to collect data. We have very good data for EU countries, we have very little data for non-EU countries, the other 19 member states of the Council of Europe. Third, we need to continue with assistance programs for governments, for NGOs, for human rights structures, and we need to protect human rights defenders, LGBT activists who are under threat. So I think that there's a lot of work to do, a lot of public education, public awareness raising, particularly on issues pertaining to transgender and intersex persons. On transgender persons, we move forward on awareness. On intersex persons, this is just beginning to attract attention now. and I think a lot of awareness raising work needs to be done, and my office will be very engaged in this.
That this small country of over 400,000 people has signalled through its changes in its constitution to the rest of the West that gender identity must be included in any modern constitution that seeks to afford its citizens equality, dignity and humanity.
The IDAHO Forum was attended by representatives of different countries from all over the world, with speakers praising the impetus this conference provided for the enhancement of LGBTI rights.
I suppose organisations like this and conferences like this, the coming together of people of like mind, trying to persuade others that the way forward is in fact to ensure that human rights are applied to everyone, is hugely important. The IDAHO Convention, which we signed, which Ireland signed this year, but most countries signed last year, is going to be a significant piece in terms of human rights for LGBTI people in the future. So we need to ensure that the type of discussion we've had this morning, that the type of exchange of ideas, the exchange of information, the exchange of knowledge needs to continue, because we are a very long way off getting true equality.
Yes, I'm very happy to be here representing also the perspective and the experience of national equality bodies across the different countries. I think this event is highly important to underline the need for greater action and progress to be made on promoting genuine equality for LGBTI and combating homophobia and transphobia, and the need for cooperation between the different actors, governmental representatives through true political leadership and commitment, but also strong civil society who are there, and obviously strong equality bodies that are here to ensure that commitment and policies and legislation is translated in some sort of action.
I think it's a fantastic conference, the second time IDAHO conference, last year in the Netherlands, this year in Malta. It's unique to do it together with the Swedish government, which I think is very important to show the unity in Europe around issues around LGBT equality. It's very impressive to see so many ministers and high-level civil servants, NGOs coming together here. And I really hope that the political commitment that ministers have given to really advance LGBT equality, that it will result in concrete actions. Very important that the political intention now trickles down to reality of LGBT people on the ground.
Certainly for the IDAHO Forum here in Malta, I think it's the ability to show that small countries, though maybe perceived to be conservative or having traditional ideas about family life, there is change possible when politicians do take initiative and do take leadership, and I would very much hope that Ireland and other European countries will take on board the work that's been done, and obviously the great work that's been done by the activists specifically working on sexual orientation and gender identity issues in Malta, that other European countries and political leaders will, I think, step up to the plate and start doing work that's much more progressive and inclusive, that ultimately respects the rights of all of the residents in specific countries that need to be protected on the basis of their sexual orientation and gender identity.
Well, definitely it's a positive impression, because there are a lot of discussions, and also there are positive developments. My hope is that these developments will remain, that won't be stepped back, especially in the implementation of the law, in the case of Malta, and also in the case of other states. But I think that generally it's a very good impression, both on the contents and also on the organizational aspects, I think.
I come from the United Nations, and Malta is one of our member states, and I have to say that I'm very pleased to see that one of our member states is so committed to this issue that UNESCO in this case has been working on for a few years now.
Following a series of panel discussions, a ministerial meeting was held whereby ministers shared their plans on LGBTI equality domestically, common European goals, and how they could jointly work together to stamp out homophobia and transphobia. Towards the end of the Idaho Forum, 17 countries signed the Declaration of Intent, whereby they committed themselves to affirm equality for LGBTI people in all spheres of life and work in cooperation with others to enhance protection on the grounds of sexual orientation and gender identity at the regional and international levels.
The strong message is that we are now over 15 countries, I think 17 countries that have signed it, that are putting the obligation on ourselves to work seriously with LGBT rights. But you should also remember that all kinds of declarations like this doesn't mean anything if there's going to be on a paper. The Idaho Forum, I see it as a process. It started last year in the Netherlands, it continues this year, and this declaration is one big step in this process, but we also need to go home to our own countries and do our homework concerning LGBT rights and human rights.
Well, the Declaration of Intent is very important, and Ireland is delighted to have Minister Kathleen Lynch here to sign this and to put our name down on record officially as leading the way forward on this together with Malta.
The Declaration of Intent that Sweden and Malta are proposing this year is an important step forward. We believe that governments need to declare their intention to work explicitly for LGBTI equality loudly and clearly. Part-time commitment or a la carte commitment is not good enough.
The third Idaho Forum will be held in Montenegro in May 2015. It will serve as a platform for political leaders to once again work together to advance the LGBTI equality agenda further. The Declaration of Intent remains open for signatures, and countries are thus most welcome to join in.
As Prime Minister Muscat said about the concept of equality, you cannot be part-time in the defence of human rights or the promotion of equality, and you certainly cannot be part-time in the battle against homophobia.